Let's talk about another China opportunity here. Not always only NIO and Tesla and those EV stocks, but connected to that actually also Baidu, which, if you personally ask me, what is the AI company in China, I would say, well, it's probably Baidu. First of all, let me tell you, of course, I'm invested in Baidu, so I got in way below $100 and I'm long the stock. I'm also having from now and then a trading position in my more short-term portfolio. So I'm biased. I like the company, and today it's off 3%. I actually did buy a little bit today. We don't know whether or not the China rally still has some steam in here. I think it's trading in this channel, so it has met this big resistance line, but maybe it wants to close this gap another 15% up here. But well, anyways, as you know, I'm more of a long-term investor, and I initially made a video, must be maybe even 2 years ago already, that I do think Baidu could potentially hit like $500 or more as a share price. And well, without doing the proper valuation right now, I do think that this is easily an undervalued stock currently. Of course, it has been selling off like everything else. It was part of the big Bill Huang story, squeezing up there and then selling off. So yeah, the stock chart doesn't look great, but I think maybe if it's, breaking the support here and coming down again, retesting some levels here, maybe $100, this might be an interesting opportunity to look into, because in the long term, Baidu is working on many interesting things related to AI. So making the connection here to EV stocks, of course, Baidu is also famous for now also launching their own robo-taxis. Basically, I have to say I'm quite skeptical of their ventures into cars. I think the cars are overdone, but I do recognize that the way they are launching Baidu Apollo and the ride-hailing services in China, that's quite impressive. Although it is a very different way that they're doing it compared to, for example, Tesla, which is vision only. Baidu instead relying on things like LiDAR, more sensors in general, HD maps, and so on, V2X technology. So that's more the China approach, that's for sure. But the bottom line here should be that, this is really manifesting why I think Baidu is a company with lots of AI supported services, basically. I initially got into Baidu because I thought it's interesting as a play in healthcare. So they're doing telemedicine, and they also have chat operators that are AI driven, by the way. And what I think is maybe down the line, 5 years, 10 years time, is actually the fact that they're also doing some drug discovery with big compute power, machine learning, basically modeling all of the molecules and stuff, and based on that, seeing how illnesses can be prevented with new drugs. And this is also something where algorithms are playing a big role. Baidu actually also had a very quick model to to analyze the coronavirus. They've been one of the first to run this model that was extremely more efficient than what others had to offer. And so, this really shows that this company at the heart is very nerdy, very technical, and has lots of know-how in this area. And that's also my general investment thesis here. Baidu is turning from a search engine into a much more service-oriented company that is not getting the revenues and margins mainly from advertisement, which of course is one of the reasons why the stock is also down, because advertisement has certainly suffered during a recession. That's always the first thing where cuts are being made. And so, yeah, that is one of the opportunities there. And the latest news that we gotten, I think was it yesterday, is that Baidu is actually going to launch their own chat GPT service. And Of course, ChatGPT has been very, very hyped in the West by now. Just to give you also my brief sentiment on that, I think I'm currently a little bit skeptical still, although of course impressive what it can do, for example, in spitting out code and maybe substituting graphic designers and programmers. But I still do think that there is quite a way to go until it's becoming commercialized and really helpful in many application cases. So let's see. Anyways, I don't want to dive too much into the specifics of that and what OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT, but I want to just open one question or one thing to think about, which is, of course, in China, everything happens within this walled garden, so within the firewall. And this has advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are that most likely foreign companies have less of a role to play when it comes to AI in China. First of all, because China has recognized that data is very important, and so they are regulating it heavily, who can use data and who can export it. And certainly, of course, Chinese companies will get an advantage there. And so, at one hand, this is an advantage for Chinese companies, and they have also a massive pool of data, which makes the models better, because simply of the fact that they have 1.4 billion people and maybe understanding also the language Chinese better than, let's say, foreign services, right? On the other hand, it can, let's be frank, censorship is an issue here, and also AI morals and ethics can become an issue in terms of what will these models be allowed to do and allowed to respond. For example, what will happen if somebody uses the ChatGPT enhanced Baidu search engine to look for what happened with Tiananmen Square, right? Of course, Baidu will have to stick to the rules in China and be compliant with the local legislation. And so we should be expecting censorship also in the area of AI, which ultimately makes it less, fruitful, less comprehensive, less useful for the whole world in the end, because it's unfortunately not reflecting the whole truth, right? It's partly censored. Now, you could argue we also have censorship in the West, and some certain things cannot be said in the West. So ultimately, this becomes a governance issue, and we'll see what will be the exact rules that China comes up with, that the West comes up with. I think this might be a big challenging question in the next decade overall. What will be the morals and ethics of AI? What can be said is that most likely China and the West are going to develop two different systems. Chinese companies like Baidu might be possible for them to access data in the West, but for the other way around, it might be more difficult. And also offering services, many Western companies most likely won't get their fingers burned, similar to search engine business, and won't want to offer their services in China. And so this leaves a market for Chinese players. And so the question for you as a potential investor is, do you want to have exposure of that? Because certainly there will be revenues and earnings connected to that, of course. And so this is why I think it's an interesting proposition. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you find this topic interesting and whether or not I should make more videos on this subject in the future. Thanks for listening. Please consider liking and sharing it, and then see you in the next video.